Deep in the heart of Derbyshire, in the Matlock area, is a secret garden. Off the beaten track, it's 4 acres with a 100-foot cliff and a deep valley which used to be a limestone quarry. From the top of the cliff, you can look deep down into the valley. It's almost like a gorge going north-south, and it's very sheltered on both sides. Large beech trees on one side, the cliff on the other. In the centre of the garden, there's a wide range of places to sit quietly in the different corners of the garden. Towering over the central garden is this beautiful golden Buddha. There are 15 benches around the grounds where you can sit and relax. Some areas are more Japanese than others. There's even a Karasansui rate gravel garden. The area around each of the seats has been landscaped separately and differently. Some parts are more Japanese than others. And there are lots of unusual plants for you to see. Cascades Gardens has its own plant nursery. It covers a range of hardy perennial flowers and shrubs, but now also it has a bonsai center. We've brought in trees from Japan, 10 and 20 years old, and we've been creating our own trees. There's a small shop that allows you to buy pots and tools, and the whole nursery is geared up now to creating trees that are suitable for bonsai. You can approach Cascades Gardens from the nursery and gardens entrance. As you go into the car park, you find that there is an entrance hut and refreshments cabin. You approach the garden from a small gate close to the bridge. Here you can walk along the pond, full of reeds and Pseudochorus iris, and then walk around to the first seat in the middle of the pond. Here you can relax in the lush green with trickles of water. You might even catch sight of a duck or two. You can also see a statue of Andromeda chained to the rocks at the end of the pathway. Every year the pond gets a bit choked with reeds and iris, and the team and myself, we have to clear some of this. It takes a couple of days before we can get back to the clear water. As you leave the pond behind you, you then walk along the mill race. This mill race extends the whole length of the 2-acre edge of the garden, and from 1800 it used to drop water onto a big wheel on the end of our house, which was a corn mill. Looking back, you can see one of the polytunnels and seat 9, which is completely surrounded by wonderful plants, trees and shrubs. Some of them are quite rare. From the mill race you can look down a staircase which actually acts as an overflow in heavy rain. When the mill race gets under pressure, these steps become a waterfall and take the excess water down to the stream below. This seat looks back through the copse, ancient beeches, must be at least 150 years old, and the mill race, which we've had to raise the height of because of heavy flooding in recent years. You climb down about 15 steps by the ruins of the old corn mill. It brings you to a lovely shrubbery and our front drive. In front of the house, at the front part of the ruined corn mill, is a waterfall. Here in this shot, it's rather dry. And in the wetter months, it looks like this. And the history of the house is on the wall there. And we move round into the car park, the driveway, and we start to see the beginnings of the garden high up in the cliffs above. On the left we have a fully grown oak-leaved hydrangea and Persicaria firetail with its spikes of red flowers. Cascading over the old ruin are two waterfalls, both about 15 foot high. 6 months of the year they're heavily full of water. At this time it's a little bit dry in July. Lots of moss, and sometimes after a heavy rain or storm, thunderstorm, it can get really heavy flow. From the car park you go through a rose arch, and that takes you to our second seat, which is on the edge of the Japanese garden. Sitting in seat 2, you have the magnificent view of the cliff and the whole part of the central garden. But what dominates is this wonderful Indian Buddha, golden Buddha, in the background. In front of the Buddha is the Japanese pot garden with azaleas and cryptomerias. Also a Catalpa bignanoides. The golden Buddha was donated to us this year by the Aldershot Buddhist Centre. It had originated from the Indian High Commission in London. It's 8 foot tall and 8 foot wide and has a wonderful peaceful expression on its face. Perfect for meditation. To one side of the Japanese garden is a quiet corner with a Karen Sansui garden, that is to say, Japanese rate gravel and rock garden, very similar to some of the monastery gardens that I saw in Kyoto in 1996. We have a special rake we've made so that we can rake the gravel carefully in circles and lines to concentrate the mind. The whole idea of this sort of Karasansui garden is that it's meant to represent an ocean with islands, or perhaps if you've ever climbed a mountain and gone through the cloud level at 10,000 feet, you'd recognize the peaks of mountains poking through a layer of cloud. Beyond the Golden Buddha is a quiet seating area in the Shade Garden. Shade Garden is surrounded by hostas, hellebores earlier in the year, and under the beech trees. There's a statue of Pan just in front of the seat, and it's a peaceful statue in all this lush greenery. Moving away from the Buddha, we move towards the Conifer Garden. Conifer Garden was created in November 2015 at the same time as my little daughter was born. The conifers, of course, have been growing quite rapidly in the last 6 or 7 years, and we're starting to have to thin them out a bit. The statue of Bacchus, the Greek god of wine, presides over this garden, and as you move towards the rocks, you pass more and more conifers and head towards a beautiful rose arbor where you can sit and relax and smell the perfume. All the benches in the garden are this Lucian style, and in this case it's quite a contrast to the old shed that we've had for many years tucked behind it. This used to be Lord Methuen, the predecessor's gin and tonic seat. Guess what it is now? It's my gin and tonic seat. Through the conifer border, there are some steep steps climbing the cliff. Lots of handrails, nice and strong to haul you up, but do be careful. Looking down on the old quarry, the old limestone quarry, there's a dramatic view. And slowly as you climb the steps, you go through the woodland and have spectacular views down onto the garden. From the seats on the top of Fern Bank, you can clearly see the central part of the garden and the different meditation seats placed around the garden in quiet secluded corners. Back down from your climb from Fern Bank, you pass the hut and go into another Japanese area with bamboos and statues and raked gravel. You can see here the monk meditating quietly by the rocks and a sleeping Buddha. Moving on, you go into seat number 5 area, which is perhaps my favourite. We've managed to arrange that water is dripping down the cliff into 3 pools. Little Buddhas sitting between the rocks, quietly reminding you of how you can achieve peace of mind by sitting quietly by the pools and hearing the dripping water, being enclosed amongst the rocks. From seat 5, you reconnect with the main path going down the garden. On the right-hand side, you have all the roses, which are so colourful in June. On the left-hand side of the perennial beds is a path following the flow of the stream, which comes all the way down the garden. Some of the interesting flowers are the veronicastrum, tall spikes, slightly bending over in the wind. We have a lot of malva, 6 foot high, beautiful pink flowers. And we have Actaea simplex, a dark-leafed maroon plant with a spiky white flower. At seat 7, it's a wonderful tranquil spot, sitting in front of the tufa arch and the steps coming down from the mill race, and this gentle cascade with the sound of water. The miscanthus grass covers the view a little bit and makes it that much more interesting. Tufa stone is a volcanic rock. It's quite light, it's almost like coral, and it can be found across the cliff, the other side of the valley, in Matlock Bath. Traditionally, I'm told that creating these arches, which seem to defy gravity in rather strange shapes, is part of a Derbyshire custom. Continuing along the stream, there's a whole range of marginal planting. Nice moist area, slightly shaded by the huge giant yews. Along the stream, we have all sorts of water plants, pseudochorus, different types of water grass, rheum and hosta. A little path winds up from the tufa arch towards seat 10. There are some interesting trees in this area. The Chinese lime and Liriodendron Chapel Hill. Very vivid on one side of the path is the berberis, lovely yellow flowers and rich ruby leaves. At the top of this path, on the left-hand side, a little path takes you to a beautiful Greek statue. At seat 10, which we call Paradise because of the beautiful range of flowers which you can see, you're sitting under the Circiphyllum tree, which goes beautifully pink in the autumn. Opposite you is a hellebore bank, which in March is a blaze of colour, a whole different range of Helleborus orientalis. There are a number of very attractive hydrangea here in this border. In the triangular border there are a number of shrubs, including a poplar tree and Catalpa bignanoides in its yellow form. Looking down towards the nursery end with the polytunnels, you can see seat 8 and seat 9. In the spring, seat 9 has a wonderful array of rhododendrons in pots. In the small polytunnel, we have a whole range of cuttings that I've taken over the last 5 years of all the different conifers that we have in the grounds. The Cascades tumbles over the wall from the mill pond into the area of seat 9, through the tufa arch, and passes by the nursery beds. A wider range of marginal flowers here, lots of colour, Pseudochorus iris, Persicaria of finis, variegated irises. And all the way along the right-hand side of the stream is petisite. This is an almost wild plant that loves being by having its feet in water and can be found beside all the rivers in Derbyshire and grows wild. In the early spring, the petisite shoots up white spikes of flower before the leaves begin, and then gradually the leaves take over during the summer, a little bit like a rhubarb plant, and envelops the flowers. There are lots of Letharum and Astilbe in different colours, pinks and red, but also Hemeracalis, bright orange colours, and a variegated hosta, bright yellow. Looking back down the path are two ancient yew trees, placed in a pair. They are at least 150 years old, and the bark is really attractive and smooth. A second tufa arch, one that I've created from surplus tufa rock that we found around the garden, takes you to the arch of the nursery. Through the arch into the nursery area, the first polytunnel is all about bonsai. I have a range of trees that are being prepared for bonsai and some imported Japanese trees which are perhaps 10 or 20 years old. The main polytunnel is full of hardy perennial flowers. It doesn't take you long in the nursery before you stumble across the lead mine. This is perhaps dating back to 1800. It goes 150 feet inside the cliff. It's quite safe now. We've cleared the floor, and the light switch is on the left as you go in. There's a spotlight every 5 meters. There is a log cabin that forms the refreshment area, and here you can have a cup of tea, coffee, cold drinks, and a selection of delicious homemade cakes. We call ourselves the Meditation Garden because we have 15 benches scattered around the site, some on the cliff, on the hillside, in quiet corners, and the seats are numbered. So when you're greeted at the garden, you'll get a guide which takes you round seat by seat, and if you follow the seats, you'll get to all the best bits. The garden opens from the 1st of March to the end of September, and we open from 10 a.m. in the morning till 4 p.m. in the afternoon. We're open every day except Wednesdays and Thursdays. We have concessions for RHS members on Mondays and Tuesdays, and also we offer concessions for Gardener's World 2 for 1 during the other weekdays. We provide refreshments, hot and cold drinks, and homemade cake. And we welcome gardening groups, horticultural societies and so on, and can cater for that. We look forward to welcoming you to our garden.